Hello friends, my name is Nick, and today we're just going to relax and do some spring repotting. After the winter months, I have a bunch of plants that are in need of a new pair of pants, and now that it's April and the growing season and springtime and all those wonderful things, it's the perfect time of year to go ahead and do some repotting. I have a bunch of planters on hand today, some more mass-produced, some from smaller businesses, always love that. So yeah, we got a lot to choose from, and I have plenty more planters as well that are out of camera. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I have one that I already picked out today, and I have plenty more that I'm gonna think about while we're going through this process, but I figured we'd start off strong with the rotundifolia. This planter is clearly made out of terracotta, and it's a hanging planter. I really love that it's got like the jute rope already built into it. I did drill a drainage hole into this. I kind of regret that. Even though it wouldn't have a drainage hole, since it's made of terracotta, if there was extra moisture sitting inside the planter, it would kind of suck it out, but now it just kind of freely drips onto my windowsill if I water it too much. And this, if it dries out, I feel like I've had it for about a year now, so if it does dry out, the water can get really hydrophobic if I'm not running it under the sink and just like fully saturating it. So if I just give it a little water, it's just gonna fall right through, come out the hole. So I figured I'd rather have more of a chance for the water to stay inside than it to just freely come out. And I feel like I'm explaining this too much already, but let's just go ahead and repot this beautiful plant. You can see how little soil it has already. It's depleted quite a bit in the last year or so that I've had this plant. I think I did get it last spring. So I have a bunch of soils on hand. I can make some mixes if I need to. I think for this rotundifolia, I'm kind of between if I want to use a regular houseplant tropical and classic mix, or I think I might actually go for the succulent, cactus and succulent classic mix. This is not a sponsored video by any means. I am using soils from Repotting.com, but this is just my own video today. If you are curious, I will leave stuff in the description. We're gonna use this just classic cactus and succulent potting mix. No frills. I'm just gonna go ahead and start dumping it in this planter here. I don't know how high up I want it because this is obviously living in not that much soil, and this is like 10 times the volume. So I think we're gonna keep it decently low, probably about 2/3 of the way, I would say, which is a little bit lower than I'm used to doing. So it's gonna be a little bit lower inside, but I think it's gonna look a little bit better with its appearance. Fortunately, there are plants in the windowsill below where this is hanging, so if it does drip a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. It's usually dripping inside a planter, but you know, still just dripping water freely. That's kind of messy. But this just dries out so fast, as you can see from how little soil is left inside the container. And every few days I have to go ahead and take it over to the sink so it doesn't just spill everywhere. So I think this will just make things a little bit easier, just a tiny bit easier, but easier enough. So what do I want to talk about today? Didn't think that far ahead. First and foremost, I guess, I feel like I've been seeing comments every now and again on my videos that are like, you seem happier, but I think you're faking it. I'm definitely in a much better place with this space. I still don't love it. I'm still like trying to like gaslight myself into enjoying it, but it's not going very well. But we're in a much better place with my home than we were 6 months ago. Most of the problems are as fixed as they can be. I do feel like I've seen comments that are like, you're fixing all these problems and then you're just gonna leave and then all the problems are gonna be fixed. No, this place is never going to be 100% fixed. I feel bad for whoever rents this place in the future. The thing about it though is that it's a gorgeous apartment. It is so nice looking, and I've been having fun decorating it, and the more I like plant it up, and now that it's spring and all my plants are starting to grow and it's so much brighter in here, it feels so much better. But the overarching feeling of all the issues I've dealt with is just not gonna go away. So we just gotta make it through the summertime, hopefully problem-free, and we will take it from there. I'm absolutely feeling happier though. Do I play it up for the camera sometimes? Yes, it's just part of filming. It's part of making YouTube videos. Obviously, I'm not going to be sad and boring for you on camera. It's the last thing you want. But I don't think I'm faking it by any means. Ooh, I kind of wish I potted this a little differently. Now that I see that the way that the planter hangs, I kind of wish it was all going this way. But you know what? It's just going to lean towards the sun anyway. That's what it's been doing this entire time. I just don't have the freedom to move it around. But I still think it looks amazing. It's got a bunch of new growth coming in. I'm gonna just pop this in the sink. I'll give you a close-up. Gosh, I know, we're far away. I always forget how far away the camera is and I forget to film close-ups, but I don't feel like this isn't exciting if I just walk up to you and I'm like, hello, look at this. But you know what? I guess you get to see it a little bit better. The cool planter. Actually, I can't see the monitor, so I don't even know how well I'm holding it on frame, but you can see all the little new growth coming in, hopefully. And throughout this growing season, now that it's actually got some soil to deal with, I think this is going to grow a lot better. Alrighty, so next I actually got this last year from Plant Haven, Toronto. It's a philodendron tortum. It's a really cool plant. Looks more kind of like a palm or like an amidrium, zipolinium. I have it sitting inside this planter from Berg's Pottery, one of my favorite places to get pottery from. I think this is the vibe. There's so many other options too. It's got a lot of space. I might consider putting it in something a little bit smaller, like this. This is actually, wait, I really like this. We're gonna do this. There's also this one, but I don't know. That looks really good too. That does look really good. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Both are really appropriate on the size. As you can see, this is fitting nicely inside here, fits nicely inside here. It's got a little bit more space in there, which almost makes me feel like maybe I should put it in this one. But I do kind of like the way it looks in this planter better. I like how it kind of leans out a little bit more. Let's take a look at the roots. Let's do that. All right, so I think we're gonna save this Berg's planter for something else, but this is a really nice planter, so I'm more than happy to save it for something else. I have a begonia in a green one of those that I've had for years and like died back. I used to have it outside in the summertime and it would grow beautifully, but then over the winter times, it doesn't do that well, so it was like down to nothing and I was about to throw it out, but now it has 2 leaves on it and I really want the planter, but yeah, I had the plant for too long to mess with it, you know what I'm saying? So, all right, let's go ahead and take out this moss. Oh, there's some nice roots on here, actually. I think I will include some of the moss in the potting mixture that we make. So we're gonna create a just like light philodendron mix. I'm just gonna loosely get this out before we get started with that. There's some stuff going on down here. I see these little like white shoots. Don't really know what's going on with that, but we're just gonna repot this and hope for the best. So looking at these roots, they are, I mean, there's a good amount of roots and they are quite nice. I just do think that that planter might be a little too large for what this might appreciate. That does look really good in here too. All right, final verdict. We're gonna go ahead and put it in here. I think it's gonna be happiest in here. Do you see? I'll come forward because I know I'm not gonna be able to get a second shot later. These little white shoots that are going on right here. I'm not really sure if that's like new leaves that we're gonna start or if they're just like intense roots. But yeah, we're just gonna roll with it. Yeah, I'm not sure. In fact, this one looks really loose. So we're not even gonna put that much hope into it. We got the nice chunky leaves here. That's all we need. So I got one of these buckets here. These are from Centurion. I did a sponsored video years ago on these. I'm gonna grab some just regular classic tropical houseplant mix. I'm gonna pour some of that in this bucket here, just a little bit. In fact, I think I have another philodendron I'm gonna repot after this, so I'll make a little bit more than I was planning on. We're gonna dump in some perlite, just some sponge rock or volcanic stones. You can even use pumice. I actually do have some pumice stones, so maybe I'll throw a little bit of pumice in there as well. Why not? Pumice is slightly heavier than perlite, but it's still very, very light in comparison to many other stones. And I have some orchid bark. I have extra fine bark here today. You can use whatever you got. I'm just gonna grab a spoon and I'm gonna give it an old mix, just like we're mixing some dry ingredients together when we're making a cake. Hold it up for you to hopefully see. It's got some nice grittiness to it. And we'll go ahead and just take a nice scoop of it and dump it in the base of our planter here. Let's fill up our planter probably about 1/2 inch, no more than 1 inch. before we go ahead and get our philodendron situated in there. I'll get some of those roots kind of tucked in. In fact, like I said, I'm just gonna throw just a couple bits of just a little sprinkling of the sphagnum moss in there, just so when I go ahead and grab a little bit, it's already just kind of mixed in there as I'm throwing it on top of the roots. This could really use a support eventually, like I could give it like a moss pole or a little bamboo stake or something, but it's just 2 leaves right now. And from the look of what's going on under there, can't tell if it's about to pop off with some new growth or if it's about to just once again do nothing for a year or so. But hey, we got these 2 beautiful leaves. I can't complain whatsoever. But now that it's out of the sphagnum moss, hopefully we're gonna be setting it up for success inside this terracotta planter with some soil that is catered towards the roots that aroids have. That's gorgeous. I really like this planter. I'm a really big fan of these like rustic terracotta planters. They definitely don't have as much longevity to them as regular terracotta. They will get weathered a little bit quicker and they can chip a lot easier, but I still get plenty of years out of them. I'm planning on doing one of those like IKEA greenhouse cabinets. I think this would really appreciate that sort of setting. I'll keep this one on camera. It might be a little off camera, but we'll keep him hanging out right here so you can see him. But yeah, this would grow fantastically inside the IKEA greenhouse cabinet. I just can't decide. There's so many to choose from. I'm a Libra. I'm very indecisive. I have a very hard time making decisions like that. So wish me luck. But I have this philodendron Plowmanii that I got from the Philadelphia Flower Show recently, and I feel like I've had it for a month now. I could go ahead and repot it. The soil is barely moist. I just don't know what I want it inside, and I kind of think I want to grab a moss pole for it. Just one of these little coconut coir ones is fine, but it's just getting some vines, so as you can see, it's like 10 inches tall. It's gonna just flop over, so I might as well just get it up on something, and it's got like a back to it, as you can see, so I could get it inside a planter, just one of these little poles, and just get it going, get it started. I think that actually looks really cute, just like that. So what planter do I want it inside though? That's the question. This would look good. It would absolutely look good in here. Once again, kind of a little bit more space than I would like to give it, but I feel more comfortable with this being in soil versus the Tortum was in the sphagnum moss. Go into a slightly larger planter. Could we try the bergs? I think that might be actually too small. I don't even know this is gonna fit in there. Yeah, that looks kind of awkward, but that's just coming out the top, the little stake. We're gonna go ahead and put it in the rustic terracotta planter. I think it's gonna be fine. Let's remove these 2 little yellow leaves that we have at the base and lightly remove this. Oh, those roots are fantastic. They're going all over the place, all around the perimeter of the planters. This is gonna be totally fine moving up to this. It's 2 inches in diameter larger, so that's pushing it. When I'm working with planters this size, I really like to go with like 1 to 1.5 inches maximum. But now I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is poking up a little bit too, but you know what? It's just like 1/4 of an inch. The philodendron's gonna cover it. It's not that big of a deal, but let's just go ahead and get the moss pole settled in there before we do anything. Dump in a little bit of our philodendron mix that we just made. Let's loosen up these roots just a little bit, just a titch, to let them know that it's time to explore. Looks great. Setting inside with this back right up against the moss pole. That looks amazing. I'll hold it up for you so you can see. It's incredible. Match made in heaven. I'm not really sure where I'm gonna put this. This has just been hanging out on the bench over by my window because it wasn't taking up that much space in that little tiny planter, but now that it's in the slightly larger planter with the moss pole, I think I really might need to get one of those greenhouse cabinets now. As I always like to do, we'll lift it up and just give it a little bit of spank just to get that soil settled down a little bit, trying to keep this moss pole from moving too much. Since this is in a slightly larger planter than I was saying might be suitable, I'm going to make sure I keep this in a well-lit location where this is going to be able to process all the water that's hanging out in the soil just so it doesn't sit too wet too long. Overwatering is the #1 cause of death with plants, so I really want this beautiful philodendron to look amazing for as long as possible. So I'll go grab a little piece of plant Velcro and we'll use this to keep this taut to the coconut coir pole. Alrighty, we got 2 plants down. That looks so much better than it did before. Before it was just a single plant, or 2 plants, but just a single looking plant coming out of a pot. Now this looks like a whole like statement piece, obviously a very small statement piece at that, but the leaves just look so much more dynamic when it looks like they're growing up the moss pole, and they will grow up the pole. They're not gonna stick to it the way it would if I was growing this in a greenhouse, but now that the humidity is gonna be a little bit more high, and with the growing season, of course, giving this the energy to grow a little bit more, it will start to feel the energy of this moss pole here as it begins to grow higher and higher up. We are just going to have to physically keep on attaching it to the pole because it's probably not gonna root into it the way it would in those higher humidity environments. I'll make some room for this beautiful plant right up front here. We can't forget about it. It's just so gorgeous. I gotta find a really good spot for that, but that would also just look fantastic inside one of those greenhouse cabinets. Just have to execute that. I have a bunch of Hoyas that I got from Plant Haven Toronto recently, and a lot of them would look a lot better if they had a new planter, but so many of them are growing so well right off the bat. I never have Hoyas grow immediately. Always, they take like a year or two before they start springing into action, but they really seem to like this space. So I'm just gonna let a lot of them relax. I might give them another month or two before I repot them. So we might do like a Hoya repotting, you know, later this spring or in the early summer or something. But I have this Peperomia dolcetia. I got this from Steve's Leaves, I think like 2 years ago at this point, maybe a year ago. And it's been living inside this plastic planter and it's been very happy. And I'm kind of like, maybe I shouldn't take it out, but similar to the Cissus rotundifolia that we repotted at first, this is becoming slightly hydrophobic where when I water it, the water will just like sink through the bottom. You can see, once again, the soil's kind of depleted itself from living inside the same soil for probably about 3 years at this point, including the time that it was growing in the greenhouse. So I think it's time to get it into something, and I don't think I need to go too fancy with it. I guess I could put it inside this Berg's potter right here. It would look really nice. It would look really, really nice. The thing is, I already have, oh my God, that looks, wait, I think we're gonna have to do that. I already have a different Peperomia that looks very similar to this, a Peperomia angulata growing inside this same exact planter in the darker color. So kind of feels like been there, done that already. But this looks so good. It's just like that fancy royal looking rim and the way that the leaves look just spilling out. I think it looks a little bit better than when it's just sitting inside this plain terracotta pot, which I love terracotta. I got plenty of it, but okay, all right. No one's got to convince me. I'm a little picky with repotting my Peperomia. Picky with potting Peperomia. That's a hard thing to say a lot. Not as hard as Cebu Blue Pothos. That one, so hard to say. No Cebus today. I'm picky with repotting my Peperomias, and that's typically because I find many of them will rot and die when I repot them. But these like trailing varieties, I have very good luck with. I have no qualms with repotting this today. I think, in fact, it's only going to encourage it to grow more. Although this is just, I'm so happy in this small root space. Like I do have this planter right here. Oh, wait a second. That's pretty interesting as well. I like how it's really skinny, so this plant will stay kind of how it wants to stay in terms of there's no roots really growing along the perimeter of this planter like we were seeing with the philodendron we just repotted. That signified it would probably be fine with a little extra space. This might be a little happier, just kind of being stuffed into something. I don't know, this isn't bad, although this is just a match made in heaven right here. I just wish I had this in a size smaller. The planter is really interesting. I haven't used it in about a year. I feel like I had my white princess philodendron in there and I took it out and I haven't really had something to put in it since, but this is really interesting. I told you, I'm a Libra. I'm very indecisive. I have a really difficult time deciding on things like this. Oh, that's also amazing. That's also amazing. Oh no. This is why I need to do these like live, but I'm terrible with live stuff. It's just not my vibe, okay? I like to do things a little pre-recorded. Oh gosh. Wait, I think this is actually it. I think this is it. It's just perfectly low. It's like a little dish, and that's what this plant wants to be in. It's glazed, which I'm just hoping to put in something unglazed because it's gonna keep the moisture up, but it's just so small and it has a really big hole in the bottom. This was a planter that was gifted to me by some followers who came in to visit me back when I worked at Urban Jungle. And I really love this planter. They gave me a couple other planters too, but this is my favorite one that they gave me, I will say that. So I think it was actually made by their niece. So I love that. The name is abbreviated on the bottom. I apologize, I would read it. But yeah, this is really, really gorgeous. I think we're gonna just use the plain cactus and succulent mix. It's getting a little messy in here. It's only gonna get messier as we go, but yeah. Let's go ahead and just grab our cactus and succulent mix that we used earlier. We don't need to do any amendments. I guess we could add like a little extra bark, but it's just we're working with such small amounts of soil here. It's really not a big deal. I'm just loosening this up because it got a little packed down. Grab a little bit in our pot here, lift up our plant, and just pour in the tiniest bit, just like enough to just cover that drainage hole a little bit, like 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, and we'll place this inside. There's no roots going around the perimeter, so there's no need to loosen it up, because that actually might just cause more problems, especially with a peperomia. And I mentioned already that this plant is from Steve's Leaves, so of course I'm gonna leave my code on screen where you can save 15% if you use code phillyfoliage on stevesleaves.com. You can only use that code once per year until it resets next year. So get a good purchase in, and definitely make sure you get a good purchase in, because if you spend more, I earn more, because I will get commission from whatever you spend using that code. So if you want to support me while supporting a small business, while also greening up your home and growing your collection, nobody loses in that situation. Literally everybody wins. It's the best of both worlds. It's not how the phrase is supposed to go, but I'm always amazing at butchering phrases. So here we go. It looks so good. I have a couple little white saucers, white terracotta saucers that I can use with this, and it's just gonna blend right in. That is so cute. I'm so happy that this is a way that I'm using this planter, because I really love this planter. I have a soft spot for hand-thrown pottery, obviously as somebody who did hand-thrown pottery just as a hobbyist, not as professional as this beautiful piece right here by any means. But it's just so nice to use this beautiful planter in such a gorgeous way and display one of my favorite plants so beautifully. This one is gonna hang out for a day or two before I go ahead and water it. These two, I'm going to water as soon as I'm done filming. I went ahead and watered the cissus immediately because it needed a watering, if I'm gonna be honest with you. But this is gonna hang out as most cacti and succulents would prefer when you first repot them. You might actually cause more problems than not if you go ahead and water them as the roots are still settling in. And as you probably know, cacti and succulents appreciate being on the mildly drier side in comparison to many of the tropical plants that we're working with. All right, and the last one we're gonna repot today is going to be this gorgeous Thematophyllum stenolobum. I think this used to be called a philodendron stenolobum, so it's just like all those Thematophyllum thingies that have like the big trunks that they grow out of. I got this from Steve's Leaves, and I'm really excited to watch this grow, and it's a really nice cutting of it. It's a stump cutting that has 3 new growth points coming off of it, so I'm really thrilled. In fact, this might actually look perfect inside this Berg's potter. Wait, that's literally perfect. It's gonna need to be repotted next year. It's, you know, Thematophyllums get pretty beefy in comparison to some of the other philodendrons that might be able to withstand life in here for a couple of years, but if I grow it to its fullest potential, it's going to get quite beefy and chunky and all of the good things that we love. And it's growing inside sphagnum. Oh, shit, those roots are really something right there. It's growing inside sphagnum moss right now, and it's drying out like the dickens, so I could really get this into something, you know, with soil in it, first of all, but also slightly larger than this little 2.5 inch planter that it's been growing in. I was so thrilled to have gotten this in the Steve's Leaves unboxing. This has been like loosely on my wish list for a couple of years now. I feel like I'm not really like seeking out plants the way I used to in the past couple of years, but I'm still, you know, have my eyes peeled for some nice plants, but I wasn't expecting this at all, and just didn't even know that they really carried it. So I'm like really thrilled to be growing this in my collection now. It might look a little boring or wimpy right now, dare I say, but when this thing gets older, the leaves are very similar to like Bilietiae philodendron. Really, really stunning, but it's growing on like the Thematophyllum trunk. So just like that philodendron hope or the Thimatophyllum bipinnatophytum was what it's called now. That trunk, if you're familiar, I think it really has a dynamic presence in comparison to some of those other aroids. The leaves right now, I think, are giving more of like a philodendron burl marks vibe. So a little bit more of a common philodendron in comparison to the Billietiae. You could see why the Billietiae might bring a little bit more excitement. But I think they're all really exciting. This one just has the best of both worlds, using the phrase correctly this time. I learned from my mistakes. But we got this decently enough. Like I said, I don't mind keeping some of the sphagnum moss in there because it's what it's been growing with. It's what it's been comfortable. But we need it with some soil. Give it a little shake just to get some of that loose stuff out. And what are we gonna do? We're gonna make a quick philodendron mix once again. We used the rest of our philodendron mix that we had earlier. So let's just grab our bucket once again. We'll do a little dump of the classic tropical mix. This is a coconut coir based mix, by the way. I highly recommend using coconut coir based mix over peat moss based mixes. Your plants love it, and not to mention it's much more sustainable for the environment. So we love that, but truly I have noticed such, I think I put way too much in there because I'm yapping away. I've noticed such a difference with my plants growing in coconut coir soil versus peat moss based soil. So take my word for it, or don't. You can do whatever you want. It's not going to change how I live my life. We'll dump of perlite. We'll get some of this bark. And why not? Just because we did it earlier, just for consistency, just throw in a little handful of pumice stones. Just for fun. Oops. And give it a stir. I have my spoon, stirring our cake mix, our flour and our baking soda and our salts. I think sugar is often a wet ingredient. Even though it's dry, I think it depends. Don't ask me, my channel's not about baking. Although I do enjoy baking. Take some of our soil. This might be too much. We're gonna dump in probably about a ½ inch in the base of our planter. This is a good amount of roots right here. In fact, this is a good enough amount of roots that we probably could go in something even larger like this planter right here. But that is, not doing it for me today. Love the planter, obsessed. But this plant is just a little small. I think this Berg's planter will suit it perfectly for this growing season. Come next growing season, we can go ahead and plant it in something like this. And I think it's going to look much more up to the stature of something we would appreciate in that size planter. Oops, I just dropped that planter saucer, but those saucers, these Berg saucers, are super sturdy. I feel like it could take a good tumble before it goes ahead and breaks it all. Be just pretty loose and rough with this. Not aggressive by any means, but when I first got into gardening, I would take like 30 minutes to repot one single plant, which we enjoy, like the ritualness, the ritualisticness, don't know the word I'm looking for, of all of that. But after working at the plant store and people asking to get their plants repotted all the time, it's like a 30-second task for me at this point. I always go ahead and push. Did I do that? I don't know if I think I did. I spanked them, but I always go around the perimeter of the planter with my thumb or my fingers just to make sure that any air pockets are full, because if not, when you go ahead and water your plants, I mostly did it, I could have done it a little bit better. When you go ahead and water your plants, if you don't do that, then the soil can just sink down the side, and then you're gonna have to fill it up with soil again and water it, blah, 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 blah. It's just better to keep the soil consistent with the same moisture and not dry pockets and wet pockets and all of that stuff. This looks so good. I love the Berg's planters. I really wish I could have found something to use with that mustard planter that I have on the floor next to me today. Really gorgeous planter. And they're not the most inexpensive planters, so I really like to give them the use, but I'm sure I'll find something. But this mustard planter needs like a really good green plant in it. That's why I had the Tortum sitting in it originally, because these just like green leaves in the mustard yellow look great. I really love playing with that green and yellow, because I love yellow. Yellow is one of my favorite colors to incorporate in the home, because next to green, it's one of the most natural colors, I feel like, of the rainbow. So yeah, that's gonna do it with today's video. I've got to do something, I feel like I've mentioned 6,000 times, but I never really gotten in depth. I should have talked about that. I can talk about it for a second. I've been doing work for Soltech. I work for Soltech now as their social media, what is it? their content creator. I'm on their social media team. We have a small team of people who work on social media. I do the content creation for YouTube and Instagram. And I have some work to do with that today. And looking at the time, I gotta wrap this up so I can go move over to that task that I have going on. But yeah, I highly recommend that if you don't already, follow us on Instagram at Soltech or follow us on YouTube to check out the content that I'm doing there. It's literally just like my own content that gave me the freedom to basically do whatever I want. I'm not shoving grow lights down your throat by any means. So yeah, if you enjoy my content and you want to see more of that, but not on my own platform, definitely check out what I have going on Soltech. I would really appreciate it, and I know the business would too. Thank you for joining me with this little spring repotting today. We'll definitely do more repotting, whether later this month or later this spring, earlier in the summer. I have a ton of Hoyas that need to be repotted, but like I said, so many of them are springing into action so well right now that I just don't want to mess with them. I'm not taking that chance right now because a lot of these Hoyas, whether I've had them for just a couple of months or I've had them for a couple of years, a lot of these Hoyas have done nothing for me in the past. So I am so grateful. But yeah, I hope that you got some inspiration from today to do some repotting yourself, or maybe I reminded you to do some repotting now that it is the spring or growing season. The only thing I would say is that if you just got plants and brought them into your home within the last month, I would wait until it's been at least a month or they're putting off some nice new growth before you go ahead and repot it. Like this plant from Steve's Leaves I've had in my home for probably about 2 months now, so it's been a good time to go ahead and give it a new home. But thank you guys so much for joining me today. Like I said, I will leave anything that I talked about in today's video linked in the description below product-wise, but nothing is sponsored. But I will earn commission through some of the links if you click on them, just to give you that full discussion there. So thank you again for joining me. If you don't already, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at phillyfoliage. You can subscribe to my Patreon if you want to support me monetarily. Should talk about that soon, but I'm not really posting videos and content on Patreon anymore. I'm way too busy with Soltech. All the time that I had for Patreon is now taken up by Soltech, and now the extra time I'm putting towards YouTube, if that makes sense. So yes, I still have Patreon for the time being. If you want to support me monetarily without making a purchase on a product, you can do that, but don't really expect any content on there. And then my YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, what are you doing here in the first place? Hello, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.